Welcome to the conversation. This evening we have a woman, a Namibian product from the University of Namibia, a lawyer, became a businesswoman, chaired multiple boards. And in 2015, she married the president of Namibia. And she's been ostracized through that process, still till today. But this evening, we have a chance to sit with her and break down some of the issues that have surrounded her work as well. Welcome to the conversation. My name is Shaligan Peterson, and we have the First Lady of Namibia in the studio, Monica Gainkos. Welcome.
Thank you, Shaligan.
Let's just get on with the work that you've done. We know about the One Economy Foundation. That is truly your heart. Just tell us why the One Economy Foundation and what exactly do you do?
So One Economy Foundation, the name is aspirational. We believe there's two economies in the country. One that serves the middle class and the wealthy, and the second economy that serves everybody else. And we believe there's too many people in the second economy and too few people in the first economy. And that threatens the fabric of our society.
Yeah.
So One Economy Foundation's intent is to bring more people from the second economy into the first economy.
Yeah. Before you became the First Lady, you were a celebrated businesswoman. You often commented on a lot of stories we did at the Namibian. Where did it all start?
So it started at the stock exchange, I guess, because I worked myself up at the stock exchange. I started as a listings assistant. I became a listings officer, and then I became a listings manager. From there, I went to work at an investment bank where I headed up the corporate finance division. And from there we started Stimulus. And it wasn't just about managing the business that was Stimulus, it was also about managing all the businesses that we invested in. So I needed to be on the boards of all of those investments. And I think the key of my responsibility really was risk management, looking after the shareholder, being Stimulus, the shareholders' interest. And the reason we had an interest in those businesses is because we raised money from the asset management industry and we needed to get a certain return back. And then while at Stimulus, during Stimulus, is where I really started to do other things. And one person I feel indebted to for the rest of my life was President Pohamba. Because I was appointed to a parastatal board probably at the age of 25. By the age of 30, President Pohamba put me on his President's Economic Advisory Council, and we were about 50. In his second term, he narrowed it down to 12, and I managed to remain in. He appointed me to the Public Office Bearers Commission, and then he gave me national honors for my contribution to the socio-economic development of Namibia. So if there's somebody who really made me feel utilized and seen at a very young age, it was the former President Pohamba, and I love him to bits. He's such a role model for me, both him and the former First Lady Mekuru Penehupifo. They're just such beautiful people, but he had a very personal and direct impact on my life as well. But it wasn't just that. So you're busy managing your business, but I was always very invested in non-remunerative work. So I was the chairperson of the Association of Unlisted Investment Managers. I was on the National Council of the NCCI. I was on the SWAPO think tank. So I was always busy doing non-remunerative, high-level policy making advice. So it's always been who I am.
Yeah. You went from all those positions. You're chairing a board, you become sort of an independent woman when you do all of that, and you became the First Lady. How was that transition? And perhaps you can also delve into the idea that First Ladies are not to be seen, are not to be heard, but only to be seen in the background.
Very much like children.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So I had my own, so I knew that it was going to happen. I just didn't know the extent. If I think maybe I was naive. I knew it was going to happen. I knew I was going to have to walk away from a significant chunk of my portfolio and what I do. But it was also a personal decision. There comes a point in life where you've worked hard, you've kind of done everything you wanted to do, and your priorities shift, where certain things stop being important for me. And I think it's fine that people look at Hage as a president. They view and they judge and they talk about him relative to his position.
Yeah.
But I'm speaking about Hage, the person, highly principled. If there was a prayer I ever gave to the Lord about the kind of man I want to be married to,
yeah.
Hage checked all of it. But maybe I didn't pray to the Lord about the age difference, so the Lord wasn't so clear on that. So I didn't give clear instructions. But the Lord delivered to me exactly what I asked for, and I'm grateful I got married to Hage, because you can have your view of him as a president, but as a husband, he is just fantastic.
Yeah. Let's get into that relationship between you and your husband. There have been many conversations.
Yes.
You know how controversial it has been.
Yes.
In fact, a recent talk you did at UNAM, very interesting conversation where we had the talk about, you know, the power dynamics. You spoke about, you know, how you are in a relationship and how your bargaining power is. If you are a bit older and there is a age gap,
Yes.
you can have you have a bargaining power. But
Yes.
if you're talking about a 19-year-old and a 35 or 40-year-old,
Yes.
the bargaining power is a bit lower.
Yes.
And people sort of clapped back at you and said, but you are in the same sugar daddy relationship.
Yes. So I didn't see the clapback. Huh? As you know, I don't really monitor social media.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that there was a clapback. But if their view is that you're in a sugar daddy relationship, then they didn't understand what I was talking about when I was speaking about agency and power dynamics.
Yeah.
And I think I said it at UNAM. You cannot compare a 40-year-old mother of two with a credible balance sheet, confidence, capital, capacity, to a 17-year-old high school girl with an older person who looks after her. There's a different dynamic there. So the dynamic, why it's dangerous with sugar daddies are specific older men who prey on younger, vulnerable women, and where it's a transactional relationship. We don't have a transactional relationship. I'm not vulnerable. So I think Namibians, we like to kind of scratch on the surface of an issue instead of actually thinking about it. So I'm not in a sugar daddy relationship because a sugar daddy relationship doesn't talk about age gap. It talks about power dynamic. It talks about agency. It talks about vulnerability. Am I homeless if I decide to leave this relationship? Am I threatened with violence or being cut off financially if I leave this relationship? What is the consequence to me if I leave this relationship relative to a 17-year-old financially and emotionally vulnerable girl who has no qualifications, no assets of her own, and fear, and she's being financially supported? I see no parallel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, the talks have been going around about what your marriage is.
Yes.
And one of the very, you know, constant conversations
Yes.
or narratives are that you are in a business arrangement. And they've said that, you know, you've touched on it now, bash the age gap. But what is your response to this? And who do you think is sort of behind this narrative that you are in a business arrangement to get something out of it?
I think in any age gap relationship, whether it's like in France where the wife is significantly older, or like in Namibia where the husband is significantly older, I think there's always going to be stereotypes and curiosity and toxicity and that kind of conversation. And I can't control, I think even a couple where one is black and one is white often deal with that kind of judgment and assumptions. And I've got nothing to say to people like that, because as far as I'm concerned, I can't have to defend whether we love one another or not, because fundamentally, I don't believe you can pretend to love somebody else for so long. At some point, you're going to drop. And we're a couple who have two things. The first thing is we are under 24/7 company. We are never alone. Number one. Number two, both of our personalities are such that we are very open people. If my husband was not happy, I promise you, everybody would know by now he's not happy with his wife.
Yeah.
If I wasn't happy, I wouldn't really hide it. Because I'm not one, I wear my heart on my sleeve. If I love you, I love you. If I don't like you, I don't like you. We're not pretenders, neither of us. So I don't feel obliged to respond to people and manage their views. And I promise you, none of the people who know us and who have been around us say that we are in a business relationship. They know the truth. So why must I justify myself to strangers? But I do. So apart from the normal curiosity and stereotype that accompanies all of these kind of relationships, let me quickly address the issue of the business transaction. Yeah. This was a narrative that was pushed when people heard we want to get married. And it was pushed by people who were vehemently opposed to the idea that we're going to get married. I'm still not prepared to talk about this, and nor have I really examined the layer of hurt and pain that was caused during that time. But these people really consolidated, and it was a targeted and it was the ugliest thing I've ever gone through in my life. And one of their talking points was that she's only marrying him because, so they knew my balance sheet, these people. So they didn't say it was about money. They were saying it was about power, and I want access to business. Some of those people were during the 2017 SWAPO Congress in one of the other teams. And they continued. So that narrative died right after we got married, but the same narrative cropped up again in 2017. Now, the only way they can justify this narrative is to accuse me of business transactions, which I have not. I do not have a business deal since I became First Lady. As a matter of fact, there's been significant value destruction to my balance sheet. But they push this narrative because they need to justify, I think, to themselves around the toxicity that they injected into the air in that moment. And I think, so it's their narrative now, and they must keep it alive, but the only way they can keep it alive is through lies. So I do want to distinguish this specific narrative that was formed by these people, and then the general narrative in society when you see an age discordant couple, where there's an obvious change in a difference in age. And Sheridan, I tell you, I forget that Hage is older than me. I think he forgets I'm younger than him. And sometimes I remember one day we saw a clearly older man with a clearly younger woman, and I was like, look. It's like, what are you doing? Because I forgot it's also us. Yeah. And I caught my moment of hypocrisy. And if I'm prone to it, I can't really judge people who don't know us for also having the same train of thought. So I'm actually okay with it. My happiness is very important to me, and I'm happy. I really care less about an external audit by people I don't know.
Yeah, you remind me of two women who have been in the limelight quite a lot. Yeah. One recently spoke out, as we know, Meghan Markle. Yes. Also before her wedding and after her wedding, being ostracized, not just by the family within, but also the public, you know. And we have Michelle Obama. And for her, it was when she started speaking on her husband's campaign trail in the very beginning. She was also ostracized for speaking out. And then obviously during her tenure as First Lady, she was also ostracized for being a very vocal First Lady. And you see that to discredit the persons, the partners, of course, Prince Harry and then Barack Obama, but also at the end of the day, she said, both of them said, I'm still human.
Yes.
Do you share the same sentiments?
So again, maybe because I'm not really in Windhoek's gossip circles, nor do I really plug into social media too much where I can see this kind of thing. Yeah. My experience of Namibians has been one of extreme kindness. I get the most beautiful emails and messages. Somebody who I don't know sent me this beautiful Mother's Day gift. a month ago, somebody sent me this most amazing bouquet of flowers for nothing, just to say thank you so much. So I see a lot of positivity from many Namibians. I know there will be negativity and toxicity from some, but it's a small number. And I feel it's so unfair when I'm on a public platform and I complain about this small number of toxic people, and I forget about these thousands of people who are constantly positive, who are constantly constructive. I think we pay too much attention to the negative and the toxic, and we thank the ones who actually do support and who are so nice. And it's people I don't know, it's people I know. And I really want to use today just to say to them thank you. It makes a difference. It's you bump into somebody doing your grocery shopping in the shop, and they just say the nicest things. That's what I see more than the negative and the toxic.
Yeah. Let's also move into, we're already talking about the politics behind it. You've been called, and not just on Twitter, I'm sure you're very familiar with the calls on Twitter for you to serve the people and perhaps have that political ambition to become president. If they continue to call, are you willing to serve?
So since I remember in President Pohamba's, when he was transitioning into his second term, many newspapers speculated that I would be in his cabinet. I don't know where that speculation came from. The same thing that happened with Hage. When he was appointed or when he became vice president in 2012, again the speculation was I was going into his cabinet. And I don't know where people get these things from, because it certainly doesn't come from me. So it's true, people who understand and believe in my capacity do have a feeling I should want to become political. But people who don't like me have a fear that I'll become political. And I feel it's such a great compliment that people wouldn't create this impression if they didn't think I was capable of being a good president. And I probably would be. The problem is I don't want to be. I have no interest. And no matter how high the call is or how many people say it, it doesn't change my aversion for active politics. And that's no disrespect to those who are in active politics, because I do believe that politics really does change lives when you are sincere. But I also believe that you can also lead from behind. You do not need to be a politician to change the environment in which you operate. I believe I can be a change maker, a consequential change maker, without being a politician.
If you look at the past, let's say the past few years, you've seen the face of politics change, not just from the ruling party, but also from the opposition party. And in your view, what can the ruling party do to reverse perhaps this trend, as some commentators are saying? It faces sort of a very real prospect of losing power over the next decade or so.
So SWAPO is, what, 61 years old?
Yeah.
So this is a party that has gone through so much historically. And one thing that it's always proven is its ability to renew itself. So I'll never on a public platform lack the type of discipline to give the leaders in SWAPO advice on what I think they should be doing, as if they're not considering that. But I do want to say something a little bit more general. And it's a biblical verse. It's John 6, verse 66, where at some point the crowds who had been following Jesus and who just really wanted to see miracles, literally they wanted to see manna from heaven, when Jesus asked something of them and their commitment wavered, and the verse says they turned around and they left him. And it's because part of the challenge in our country, in our friendships, in our relationships, even with our employer, often we have unarticulated wishes and expectations, which we do not tell our employer or our friend or our acquaintance or somebody who we are being nice to, or the politician that you think you're close to. You have a desire for something that you have not articulated. And when you do not get it, you turn around and you leave. And then Jesus turned around to his disciples and he said, are you also going to leave? And Peter is the one who said, where do we go to? And I feel most SWAPO members are like me. We are like Peter. Where do we go to? And you'll notice I'm not going to answer the question about opposition. I don't worry myself with opposition. I worry myself with that I love, and I love the SWAPO party. Where do I go to? We've been given a window to see how some people behave.
Yeah.
And I always say, Shilligan, that if you want to know who somebody is, watch how they behave when they don't have power. Yeah. And some people, the way I'm seeing them behave, and they don't have power, my goodness, how will they behave the day they get power? So my question is the same question as Peter. Where do I go to? SWAPO has to reform itself. Many of us have nowhere else to go to.
Yeah. Let's just move a bit back more to the One Economy Foundation. You're currently building a safe space for young people. There have been many calls for it. If you look at community leaders, I think last year, yes, during the time of the elections, whenever you hear a councillor or a prospective councillor speak, it was the young people need to get off the streets and have a place where they can go.
Yes.
So essentially you are building a safe space for young people, and not in the very elite places.
Yes.
Right in Katutura. Can you tell us more about the safe haven for young people?
So I'm super excited about that, which we're calling Project Be Free. And we've raised 25 million Namibian dollars in the last 2 years. And mind you, that's during a COVID era. So I feel, and we've got 5 more million to raise, which I think we're going to do it easily. And the reason we're going to do it easily is we've got a great concept which includes so many different players. So it doesn't even feel like it's our project or One Economy Foundation's project. It's a project that so many people have such an interest in that it's our project. So that is what it is. We are building, I think the first bricks will go into the ground around July this year. We should be done, we're going to build in phases, but the first phase we should be done in about 1.5 years, 2 years. And the idea is to really resolve whatever service bottlenecks there are that prevent young people from fulfilling their full potential. And really just helping to remove some of those obstacles. So we'll be dealing a lot on mental health, as we currently are. We'll be dealing a lot with reproductive health services for girls and for boys. We'll be dealing with entrepreneurial development and skills development, substance abuse, and then really just giving a space where they can come and imagine what they want to do. So if it's younger kids who want to do their homework and have access to computers and wireless, that's fine, they can do that. We'll have a 3D printing machine for those who are a little bit more. We'll have coding lessons. There's going to be a lot. I'm very, very excited about that.
During your Be Free conversations, there's a lot of realness going on.
Yes.
I've been at a few of them where we've heard some of the kids really come through and ask very sincere questions. Sometimes you are confused by what they're asking, but it's confusion because you're wondering whether this has been a true thing that has happened to them, or whether they've just been thinking about it for so long. And during your engagements, you're quite honest with them, especially like the one at UNAM, the most recent one. And some have said that you speak truth to power and sort of, you know, turned it into, to frame you in a bad light, to say, oh, you're speaking about your realities, but not really trying to be honest about it. Now, do you think that some people rather frown upon this truth to power because they would they're a bit threatened by the extent of how you want to speak real to the young people?
I don't know what that is. If they're saying I'm telling a lie, they can tell me which lie it was and we can review that. Other than that, I can only speak my truth. If they have a different truth, let them speak their truth. But I don't know, I'm not one who really concerns myself too much with people whose opinions aren't based in logic and whose opinions aren't the norm. Again, it's that thing
Yeah,
of, I feel it's so disrespectful, especially look at Be Free. I mean, it's such a fantastic, inclusive, well-accepted concept. And here I am worrying about a few naysayers. I don't have that kind of ability.
Yeah, yeah. If you look at sort of the honest conversations that you have, do you think it's sort of the best way to navigate through it, especially to have conversations with young people? Often, you know, young people are saying that adults don't speak real with them.
Yes.
And they want to hide them from, and you know, you have traditionals, you have traditions. You don't speak about contraceptives with your daughter.
Yes.
In an African home.
Yes.
You pretend sex is not real. You don't get babies through sex, but you sort of try to change that.
Yes.
And have those honest conversations. And one of the things I think you most recently said was that young people are going to speak to you the way that they want to speak to you, because they are getting tired, and they're going to tell you whatever they want to say, and your reaction will obviously dictate how the negotiation or how the conversation goes further. Speak about the Shut It Down movement, and you saw how sort of quickly violent that turned. With that in mind, looking at how conservative Namibia is, when do you think it will take us to get to a point where we can have earnest and honest conversations and it's put behind, oh, but I'm an elder, you can't speak to me that way? Firstly, and secondly, if we look at Parliament, the changes it has made from the days where women parliamentarians have said, oh, but I can't speak about it because it's not my religious beliefs. And I'll come to another thing that you also had a conversation about. It was with a woman in leadership training we had with the former president, the woman president, where you said that when women just come to the table and they just want to sit at the table and represent themselves, you know, it's no longer about them, because you're a woman, so you present all the women behind you. When do you think we're going to come to a point where we have these honest conversations and women no longer become, you know, just sort of, oh, the first woman, but it's like a norm for us?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a political science concept called the Overton window. And what the Overton window is about is that politicians usually pass laws when they believe there isn't going to be a threat to their leadership. So 50 years ago, women in the workplace was frowned upon. And now we're passing laws actively encouraging and protecting women, because the Overton window opened up and politicians realized people are ready for this.
Yeah.
So to me, the Shut It All Down protests was necessary, because that's how you open an Overton window. It doesn't open on its own. It's that saying of power gives nothing without a demand. And they had their demands.
Yeah.
So we can nitpick about how they went about it, how they chose their language, how they chose to speak. I also have a few issues with that, but I'm a big picture person. And I think the big picture that I saw was a youth-led movement that reopened the discussion around gender-based violence, and re-injected a sense of urgency and accountability into it. We can quibble about the list of demands, some of which I don't really agree with, but we cannot quibble about the fact that they did inject a sense of urgency. So the Overton window doesn't open on its own. It's opened by people. If you listen to Ndili Mane or Swapo songs, they weren't asking the Boers nicely, get out of our country. They were being very rude about it. But when young people are being rude about things that are passionate to them, then it's a problem. So there's no such thing as a polite conversation when you feel oppressed. And increasingly, the women are feeling oppressed. And I think this conversation is going to become increasingly uncomfortable and rude. So I'm neither here nor there. I believe the Overton window has to open a bit more around the issue of women empowerment. And I don't believe it's the polite conversation that's going to initiate that.
Yeah. When we talk about sort of women empowerment and feminism, there seems to be sort of a denotation towards it.
Yes.
Do you think it's as a result of just misogynists trying to sort of, devalue what feminists have done, what women empowerment means to women? Or do you think there's generally a toxicity somehow also in feminism or in women empowerment? Or we do things in the name of women empowerment, but in actual fact it isn't, because it's all about me and getting my name out there and being ambitious and getting the position I want?
I'm not sure why the issue of women empowerment or a feminist would get a different review than a male political activist. Is a male activist, when he's being an activist about whatever he's passionate about, is it about him? Is it about what he wants? Is it about his profile? And why does this conversation change when it's a woman talking about an issue of women empowerment that's not just about her? Other women will benefit. So let me take you back to May Day, which we had just the other day. And lots of people who are not unionized, who do not like unions, never credit unions for bringing them all these additional rights that they have in the space of labor. But they don't like unions. A lot of women who do not identify as feminists, who also denigrate feminists, a lot of the progress that has been made in the conversation around women's empowerment was made because of feminists. Yeah. So you don't have to appreciate where the benefits came from, but at least understand that's where it came from. We wouldn't be here where we are today on women's empowerment if it wasn't for feminists. And I've noticed how the word feminist has been weaponized, how it's got a connotation, but a feminist is somebody who believes in women's empowerment.
Yeah.
Who doesn't believe in women's empowerment? If you don't like the term, fine, don't call yourself a feminist, but that's what a feminist is. And I think there's different kinds of feminists.
Yeah.
So to lump everybody in the same group, it's something that really surprises me.
Yeah. Just recently we had that statement that you issued in your personal capacity about a teacher who was also then very active in political structures in the opposition party.
Yes.
Just, saying all these things about you, including sort of a gold digger.
Yes.
And you've addressed it tonight. But perhaps you can just tell us how far that case is at the moment.
So that case is in the hands of the judiciary, and I respect the judiciary enough not to want to make a circus of that case. But I do want to say something generally about freedom of speech. And there was one case, I think it was Justice Mainga, who made a statement which I felt was so beautiful, where he said the law of defamation lies at the intersection of the right to free speech and the right to reputation. And I found that a great way for people to understand, yes, you have free speech, but I also have a right to dignity. And often, the minute somebody feels the need to protect their reputation, you've passed over from free speech and you've crossed into a violation of my rights. And that's where the defamation law becomes a cure. And the case for me is really to say to Namibians, prevention is better than cure. Rather than risking being sued, just don't defame people. Your freedom of speech is unassailable. Nobody can take it away from you. Yeah. But you also cannot take away my right to dignity. And Mr. Hishono is in a lot of trouble. And the people who spoke these stories with so much authority, if they had any integrity, they should go help that poor man. They should go give him the evidence, because without evidence, he's in trouble on that issue. So, and I feel bad for him, the individual, but we must learn that there are consequences. There are consequences. And I just feel in this country we reached a point where we started talking and behaving as if there are no consequences. And that video to me personified this consequence-free trash talking of other people, because the confidence with which he made those allegations, he was so certain about it. At some point I felt like there was a process of depersonalization, because he couldn't have been talking about me. The person he was describing in that video could not be me. And we must really review ourselves as Namibians, about the way we talk and the ease with which we believe everything that is said is an indictment.
If we look at that case and the statement that you put out, speaking about, you know, the way Namibians sort of constantly tie you to alleged corruption. We're not even starting off with the Air Namibia, the demise of Air Namibia, first of all, to people sort of name dropping, to either benefit themselves or to just sort of put your name in a dump.
Yes.
What do you have to say to those people?
So there's nothing I hate more than name droppers. And I know that some of the accusations have been a consequence of name droppers.
Yeah.
But let me tell you what worries me. People name drop because it works, which is another indictment on our system. And I'd really like the Anti-Corruption Commission to review their act and to criminalize name dropping and to have to compel somebody in a position of power, if you're going to act in favor of a tender because you heard the First Lady is involved, there must be an obligation on that person who was told the First Lady is involved to formally write a letter and say, it has come to my attention that you are part of this consortium, please confirm or deny. There should be a legal obligation, because name droppers are the worst kind of people, influence peddlers, name droppers. And I suspect there's potentially contracts that are going through based on name dropping. And we must condemn that.
Yeah. Some have actually said that in government, you are trying to have influence in government and contracts going through to benefit, you know,
which one?
You yourself.
It's a general statement. Which contract specifically?
If we look at, I'm going to go back to Air Namibia. During that time where we had the West Air, Fly West Air, and there's been a lot of talk during the lockdown where West Air was getting permits and allowances way too quicker than anyone else, and they have basically said, even some people in the travel and tourism industry have said it's only because it's prior connection to the First Lady.
I don't know what prior connection means. I know the whole of Namibia. I know every single decision maker in this country's economy. I have prior connection to just about everybody. I don't even know who the shareholders of West Air are. So corruption needs to pass two tests. First test is I need to have abused my power. Second test, I need to have benefited from it.
The abuse of power,
I do not know who is at West Air. I cannot benefit from anything that West Air gets. So I have no interest in West Air either succeeding or failing, number one. Number two, I'm not a repository of power. I don't sit in cabinet. I'm not a parliamentarian. I'm not an elected office bearer. So I'm not sure how I can be so powerful that every single deal that goes through in this country, somehow the First Lady is involved. Where do I get all this power from? So it's an illogical concept. So people hear stories, they run with it. So the West Air story is a great example. I'm glad you used it as an example, because I can prove I have no interest in West Air. Unless somebody has got other evidence. So there must be a factual basis on this West Day issue. And since those people are saying it, let those people in the travel and tourism industry go to poor Mr. Hishono, give him the evidence that they have, and save that man the legal trouble that he currently is in. I don't know what more to say about things like West Day. And then the other contracts, the reason I asked you, which one specifically, is every time I ask that question, they can't answer. So this is part of this narrative that we spoke about, that started because people want to justify the glue that holds our relationship together, because to many people, it's inconceivable that my husband and I love each other. There must be another reason. And the reason they've decided is business interest. So they try and create business interest that doesn't exist in order to justify their foundational lie. Now that's the essence of cognitive dissonance. When you believe something, somebody presents you evidence to the contrary, but you reject the evidence and you cling to your belief with no evidence. What do you do with something like that? The only thing I felt I could do here is to litigate. And it's such an indictment on all people that we are at this point now in this country that we need to litigate to bring sanity into the things that come out of the mouths of people.
Going back to just the talk on women empowerment, your Woman Days message, when you had the time to talk about, to talk to Twitter about the narratives, we're seeing a trend of women sort of no longer suffering in silence.
Yes.
I think even the case with Mr. Shongo, where you have opted to sue. Yes. We've seen multiple women follow that step.
Yes.
Do you think this is the next way to combat slut shaming?
So I have a friend, somebody who I respect deeply, who's a lawyer and has her own practice, who came to tell me after I sued that she had also sent out 2 letters of demand and she got back 2 apologies. And her view was, I'm tired. And we've seen all the litigation that is starting to happen after the lawsuit that I put in. And it saddens me. It saddens me that women have to go to this length to protect their reputations. And I don't think litigation is the answer. The answer is we need a change of mindset. I think together with you and the rest of the country, I watched a video of the same politician who called a parliamentarian an infertile witch. I watched a video of him basically saying that there are young parliamentarians who have slept their way into those positions. These are 22, 23-year-old young women being assailed by a leader of a political party in this way. And what I've seen since is silence. There's no rejection of that kind of sentiment. So when we're quiet, when women are being slut-shamed at that level, who do we protect? And it also says this kind of language, this kind of conduct is accepted in our society. So what's going to change is not litigation. What we need to change is this fundamental disrespect of women in our society. Because let's not forget, when we talk about disrespect, the reason we're talking about it is that disrespect is the root of gender-based violence. There is no person who's committed a crime of gender-based violence who respects the party they violated. So disrespect towards women is a key enabler of gender-based violence. And the more we accept disrespect of women, so when a woman gets killed and is dumped in the bush, everybody's upset. How did they do this? Everybody's got an opinion. But when women are being disrespected, which is the seed, we quiet. So we need to do more work on the root causes. And instead of just getting upset every time there's a manifestation. The manifestation starts with disrespect.
Before we continue with the conversation, please remember that you can put your comments down below, questions. We are noting all of them down, so don't be shy. I know Namibians are quite vocal when it comes to certain issues, especially the First Lady. So please do put your comments down. Remember, insults, vulgar language won't be allowed. We won't tolerate that. We want constructive conversation, constructive criticism. So those are the questions and opinions we will take during this conversation. Let's get back into just this topic. If we look at the current young woman in Parliament, and also young people that have been placed in positions in Parliament, sort of another justification is given that they go from your hand, under your hand, your office, and then they get government jobs. So you are sort of grooming them to become politicians. And saying that it's only for that reason that they do get to these positions, and it's not because of the abilities and the skills that they have. What are your thoughts on that?
So I've picked that up, and I can only talk the truth. And the truth is, I know, for instance, Patience was a volunteer in my office at some point. But if I spent more than an hour with Patience in the whole duration of her being a volunteer, it would be a lot. I found out about Patience's appointment after she had been informed and just before it hit the public domain. How do I influence an appointment that I only found out once it had effectively been done? So it's absolutely not true. Yeah. The second person who's been accused of that is Emma. Again, Emma would sit on platforms as part of the Be Free movement. Emma was supported, and I probably can't say by the grouping that supported her, but it was not me. It was certainly not me, and I think it's incredibly disrespectful towards these two young women to try and take away what they've managed to achieve and basically say, oh, it's only because they're close to the First Lady, or, oh, it's only because they slept their way into their position. So look at the contradictions here. One group is saying it's First Lady. Another group is saying there's somebody that they slept with in order to get that job. They certainly didn't sleep with me. Yeah. So there's never consistent stories to these things. There's other young people, mind you, who are part of Be Free, who are not SWAPO members, who are key organizers of Shut It All Down. Does it mean Shut It All Down was my brainchild? Definitely not. There are other young people who've gone, who are part of Be Free, they're still part of Be Free, and are active members of other political formations. Is it me who put them into those political formations? Certainly not. So I don't want an impression to be that if you close to the First Lady, you are going to somehow go upwards. But if these kids do go upwards, honestly speaking, all I can say, wow, I'm surrounded by great kids. Yeah. But another thing I want to say is I think the person you see sometimes on TV and the impressions people have about Hage Geingob are not the impressions that I have, because I have a different perspective of him. But what you see on TV is very much also my experience sometimes, because that man is stubborn as hell. He is one of the most strong-minded people I know. So I'm not sure how my husband's strong personality, his strong sense of independence, and his views of processes, systems, and institutions, and also the view that this is just a business arrangement where there's no love. How do I control a man who, according to these few people, doesn't love me, who they know has a strong personality, who they know he strongly believes in the issue of systems, processes, and institutions? Yeah. Where do I come in to influence his decision to the point where every single decision that is taken, I am blamed? It cannot be, and that's why I said in the Women's Day message, the only time society is willing to remove the agency of a man is when they want to blame his wife. Yeah. I'm sure you've seen members of your mom has probably gone through it, where maybe in-laws will blame her something that your dad did. Every single woman goes through it. So I probably just go through it on a bigger scale because I'm a First Lady, because I know my mother's gone through it. I know many women have been blamed. I know of women who didn't cry loud enough at their husband's funerals, and they were told, why is this one not crying? Maybe she's the cause of his death.
Yeah.
So a woman somehow always ends up being blamed for things around her husband. If Hage makes a good decision, credit him for it. If he makes a bad decision, blame him for it. He's the president, not me. You voted him, not me. Where do I always come in the story? So it's again that John 6, verse 66, where people surround themselves in political parties, around people with unarticulated desires, with unarticulated hopes of being appointed as ambassadors, wanting to be appointed as ministers, wanting something. And my understanding of politics is that you do it out of conviction. It's not a transactional relationship where I campaigned, therefore I must be appointed. And that's what's driving these stories around Emma and Patience. It's around people feeling, I've worked harder, I should have been appointed, and it's this damn meddlesome First Lady who went and parachuted them from her office. It's not true. Go and read John 6, verse 66, and go and look at Peter's response.
It brings me to something you also said a while ago, is that some people aren't angry that the people are eating or people are stealing. They're angry that they are not perhaps eating with. That last statement does make me think of that statement. But it seems like this conversation will not end.
But can I say something quickly?
No, you can.
Because people love to misunderstand that statement. I've got the recording. If anybody is genuinely interested, I'll send you the recording. I was speaking about integrity. The essence of what I was saying is that we lack, there can be no corruption if there is integrity. And the only way to destroy corruption is to push integrity. And then the point I made is I've seen too little instances of integrity. And the day I became First Lady, and even now as First Lady, people who are very vocal about corruption will send me messages asking for jobs, asking me to assist with their fishing applications, with their tenders. Can I not help them with X, Y, or Z? The very definition of corruption. And you're talking about and against corruption in the public domain. But here in private, you're asking your friend who's a teacher at Windhoek Gymnasium, please can I get my child into your school? You're asking your cousin who's a traffic officer, please write off my ticket. You're asking a police officer, let me give you cool drink money so you don't fine me. That is a lack of integrity. We cannot deal with the problem of corruption if we do not deal with integrity. And that's what I was saying. I've seen it. It's my experience. It's my lived experience. And if we hated corruption, we would have integrity. And there's too many instances where I've seen a lack of integrity.
How do we instill integrity into?
Right from the schools. Right from the schools, number one. Number two, we instill it through consequences. There must be consequences for a lack of integrity across the board. Number three, there must be societal rejection of it. So my views on how I deal and see money and wealth is informed by being a child who grew up in a diamond mining town called Oranjemund. I saw people become wealthy overnight, and I saw them lose that money and really how it impacted them and their kids. And so to me, it's not a sustainable plan, but people were doing it because there wasn't consequences. The kind of diamond dealers we saw in the mid-80s and the early 90s, we don't see them anymore. Why? There were consequences after independence, which there weren't before independence. But what I also saw as a child of Oranjemund is how people who were wealthy were respected in society regardless of how they made their money. And I've experienced this. There was a time before I became First Lady, I had a very expensive car, and I had a smaller car. Even the petrol jockey, when he saw the expensive car, he would come running at me, because he knew he was going to get a tip. When I was driving my small little car, he would kind of walk, taking his time, like this one now also. So the respect we assign to wealth is a function. You buy a brand new car. I've experienced this at the robot. There's people looking at you. They're literally doing this thumbs up. Yeah, wow, what a nice car. Yes. So I think we also trigger people to want to be corrupt. When you are telling your uncles and your fathers and your cousins who are in influential positions, every day you need money from them, every day you need a position from them, you are inducing them to become corrupt. So this is a societal problem that we need to address from so many different quarters.
Yeah. Let's just go to some of the comments from socials. First of it is, Madam First Lady, don't you think it's good for you to perhaps forgive poor Bishop, since you are a mother and you gave him a serious warning? Perhaps before you do respond to that one, there's another one that said, we will be foolish not to have some serious conversations such as this. Uncomfortable conversations are long overdue, and we need to tackle them. I don't know if you've seen our very first uncomfortable conversation right here. But there's also someone very interesting, Mrs. Simon, who said that, what is Beefree? Is it a club in Ohangwena? Yeah. And then the First Lady transcends Namibia. She has worked with other African First Ladies before. And are there any projects that you will be working on and coordinating with other Africans during this tough times?
So let me start with the last, comment. So there is an organization of African First Ladies, and we work very closely together. And many of us have each other's numbers. We talk to each other. We text each other. And there is something that I want to work on with the First Lady of Congo as well as the First Lady of DRC. First Lady of Botswana is a great friend. As a matter of fact, her and I share a birthday. We're both 15 November babies. So yes, there is a lot of coordination and collaboration there. The issue of me forgiving Bishop, one thing I always pray for is that I never suffer unforgiveness. And in order for me to be sane, Sheligan, I've had to forgive a lot of people. Yeah. And I've forgiven Bishop. And forgiving somebody and holding them accountable for what they've done are not the same thing. So I could have forgiven him, but still hold him accountable. I see no contradiction.
What legacy do you want to leave behind?
I'm still alive. I think the legacy I want to leave behind is one of service and one of having been true to myself. And if my truth was wrong, taking accountability that I was wrong here. I think that's it. I think just being authentic to myself. I think we live in a world, whether you're a First Lady or not, that often tries to tell you who to be and tries to tell you who you are. And I want to be remembered as somebody who knew who she was and pursued what was important to her.
Yeah. There you have it. I'm so sorry I couldn't take all your comments. The conversation can go on forever. It seemed like it was so quick. I'm quite shocked that we came to the end of the conversation, but it was an absolute pleasure to have you here, First Lady, and for you guys to tune in and to also engage with us. We do appreciate it here on the conversation. We're trying to build a participatory democracy to ensure it's just not one voice speaking, but everyone's voice is speaking, everyone being heard. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Have a blessed evening.